Just
I
checking.
have hello, yeah, hello Nina, hello Jolene. I usually have it set up for automatic recording because if you recall the first few of these things we did,
Yes, you
Doug,
and I always forget.
we always forgot to record it, so I have it automatically set up to record every time.
Very good.
Um, And it is now 7 o'clock. Just welcome everyone. We'll give a couple more minutes for people to roll in. I don't know how many people will be attending. But we're going to keep this fairly casual. I set it up for webinar, but we're quite happy to open the mics up and let people talk if they want. You just have to raise your hand. Um, so maybe I'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. Now we'll give it a couple more minutes. We'll see if anybody else shows up, and then we'll do some housekeeping. Um, See, well, looks like we've stopped at 19, which is a nice number. Um, so housekeeping, the Q&A should work. The chat looks like it is working. Please put questions in the Q&A if you can, because it'll be easier for us to track later, and get them answered. Um, and you're welcome to use under reactions. You will find raised hand, and if you want to, at least that, oh boy, now that it's removed, where did they put reactions this time? Raise hand. Maybe they don't allow you that. I guess you're just going to have to let me know if you want to talk in the chat if you'd like to talk. Oh, yes, Nina's got a question spot. So that's mentioned as well. And if you want closed captions, that's available there. You can just turn them on yourself and we will get started. So to begin with, um, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I and Doug are both in northeast of Longport on Lake Erie, and that location is the traditional lands and the unceded territories and homes of the Haudenosaunee, Adirondack, and Anishinaabe and Mississauga peoples. We are also within the area of the 1792 Treaty 3, sometimes called the Between the Lakes Treaty, which is relevant in so many ways because this project is all about Great Lakes and watersheds. So it's important to keep in mind how important those lakes were to everybody in all cultures out there. I and Birds Canada support the needs and aspirations and rights of Indigenous peoples to care for the land. Now, all you folks are coming from many, many places on Turtle Island. So if you would like to check out where you are and on the lands and territories you are within, feel free. Hello, Jeffrey from North Carolina. You're probably our furthest away attending today. Um, and we'll get started. This is formal, so we won't have a huge number of fancy slides this time, and the agenda is going to be pretty simple. For those who attended the first two chats that we had this year, we're flipping things around. We're going to start with our tips and a Q&A, so feel free to put your questions on at any point if you have them. And then we'll go into Doug's remaining updates, as he has had plenty to share with us, and he has more to share with us. So I'm going to now share my slides once I get myself organized. Um, and so, Nina, maybe you could type in if you actually had a question. You were just letting everybody know where the question spot was. Now, Doug, as soon as I share this, I cannot see people. So let me know if you see any questions. Nina's just testing the system. That's good to know. Um, so does everybody see my big blue screen now?
Yep, we got it, Kathy.
Yep. Okay. That's good to know. So I wanted to talk mainly about giving bird survey tips. Now I've put a few notes down for myself to use, and I'm going to take about 15 minutes for this. But if you have questions, it will take longer. So ask your questions. Questions are always good. Um, and my best tips that I have for you is to prioritize what you are surveying. And what I mean by that is remember that you have a whole 15 minutes per station. And when you're surveying, the ones that are priority are the focal species because it's so rare to see them. So look for them first, and then look for the people that are the birds that are actually utilizing the space in the survey sampling area of 100 meters semicircle, and then go through and count your aerial foragers and your outside fly-throughs. By putting that pattern in your head, it becomes a lot less confusing when you're surveying. And be patient with yourself and take your time. A couple other things I wanted to mention was visibility. I know it's very easy to go to the exact same place that it mentions on your map. This is where I should stand. But it's okay to move a little bit. Like if you find there's a little place that's a little higher, a few meters away, stand there where you can see better. Visibility is always good. Um, I wanted to mention as well with broadcasts, separate yourself from the broadcast if you can. Like if you can hang it in a tree or a shrub or have a colleague hang onto it and you move yourself away, you'll find it much easier to hear the birds. And another interesting point I wanted to make is you know that we all have standards for wind for the Marsh Bird Surveys. So I just wanted to mention that we've had a couple interns working on studying different monitoring equipment for broadcast, and they really found a negative effect of winds over the code. I think it's code 3 we can go up to. So you want to definitely stay within that code 3 of wind, or your broadcast will not be spreading in the marsh as well as you would like. What else do I have to share here? So prioritize, as I mentioned, focal birds first, map species, aerial foragers, and then outside fly-throughs. So some other things to keep in mind is you're looking at the breeding birds. Don't worry about the chicks. They're cute and all, but we don't count them. Male blackbirds only. Remember as well that your distances change. Your focal species, if you see them anywhere, you record them. But if they're the other bird species that are not in that list of focal species, you only record them in the 100-meter semicircle. So what are the focal species? Just as a reminder, those are the ones that you hear over and over again on the tape, which is least bittern, Sora, Virginia rail, American coot, common moorhen, and pied-billed grebe. Except common moorhen is now called what? A common gallinule?
Yeah, that's right. But we're still just for the sake of convenience, because it's still moorhen on the field farms. We've just been continuing to call it that. Probably when we revamp things, probably in 2027, we'll switch over to the current common name, yeah, which is common gallinule.
Yeah. And other species that we consider focal but are not on the broadcast are American bittern, king rail, yellow rail, and black rail. Now, another point I want to make, because I think it worries people a lot, and so I really want to make this, is how rare in the Great Lakes Basin it is to see a focal species. And that's why we put so much time into looking for them. It's not unusual to go to multiple stations and not get one. So if you only got a couple station marsh and you don't see any, or you don't hear any, as long as you're putting the due diligence in to listen for them and playing the broadcast, that's okay. That's normal. And I mention that because people I think, worry that if they're not getting that species, they're not doing the survey right. But as long as you're putting the effort in and you're trying to listen for them and look for them, you're good, even
That's a
if you
really
don't
good
record
point,
them.
Kathy. Remember, we did it for one of the newsletters 5 or 6 years ago. Remember, we quantified it. We looked at what percentage of point counts for Great Lakes MMP gets a focal species, and I can't remember the numbers now, but I think it was around 40%. So
Yeah.
like more than half the time, you're not going to get one. Like 60% of the time, you're not going to get a focal species doing a point count in the Great Lakes Basin. It's just the way it is.
So if you do not get one, it's not because your marsh is bad. It's just because those harder to detect species that are very vulnerable may not be there. And if you're counting all those other species you see, there's still lots of good information that Doug works with in analysis. We still have lots to work with.
Yep.
And
I
those
mean, if you're getting like, red-winged blackbird and common yellowthroat and swamp sparrow and marsh wren, which I think are the most common for species, that's the right habitat, right? It's
yeah.
just, and documenting absence of these species, like Kathy says, is just as important as documenting presence.
Yeah, a big rosy picture and having the perfect marsh is never a good idea because it doesn't give us the information we need. So I just want to go over because I think sometimes these are easy to forget. What are the secondary bird species? First is the mapped observation. So that's anybody that's utilizing the sampling area. And I had a friend once describe this as a very big orange wedge that's 100 meters wide, 100 meter semicircle, and goes 100-meter up in the air. And that's the area that you'd call the main sampling area. So mapped observations are birds that are on that land base or in the water actively doing something, and you can hear them and you can see them. Hear them and or see them. You don't have to do one or the other. Aerial foragers are the ones that are flitting all around that sampling area, and they're usually erratically flying, and they're usually chasing something or moving slowly or speeding up, but they're obviously within the station area, and those will be your swallows and sometimes your terns. Sometimes it could be a harrier. Sometimes it could be a bald eagle that comes down and picks up a fish. Now, a fly through is something that just zips through. I have no better way of describing it. So, a black crowned night heron that's traveling to its evening roost would be a fly through. A bald eagle that's way up high, way above your sampling area that you see in every station. That would be a fly through. So that's the difference between those two, and that's kind of a good thing to keep in mind. So another thing people I think have a really, really difficult time with aerial foragers. Aerial foragers go into this little table here called aerial foragers. And what we're asking for you is to give us a max count in each 5 minute band. So say for example you saw one in your first 5 minutes, and then you see four in the next 5 minutes. I automatically assume that first tree swallow is still there. So I leave one in the first 5 minutes and I add three more for the second. And then suddenly there's 11 flying around in the last 5 minutes. So I automatically assume that four of them are already there. So what you have left is 11. But it's always keep in mind, you're never going to figure out which swallow is which, but you just try to keep it to the maximum count and when they are detected. And outside fly throughs, you don't have to count them. You just have to say, yeah, it happened. And all we're doing is we're recognizing other species that utilize the marsh. They're not using the sampling area. We just know that they're present in the marsh. So those get your least attention.
Just a sec, Kathy. Jolene says I can't see what you're presenting. Jolene, are you seeing the blue slide that says aerial foragers, counting aerial foragers, max counts, and it's got the little map? That's where we're at. No. Okay.
Is anybody else not seeing it?
Is it just Kathy and I that are seeing the slides? Oh dear. That wouldn't be good. Um, oh, Bill says he can see it. Some others can see it. Um, it might be hidden for you, Jolene, maybe somehow, or
Yeah, it might be the way you have your view set up. I promise you, Jolene, I'll send you the slides after. So at least that will help. But I don't know how to suggest you see it. Um, it may be your view choices, which
they're on a
would,
phone, Kathy. That's why it goes from,
ah,
yeah. Okay.
okay. Yeah, definitely. You probably want to go to slide only or presenter only on your phone to see it. And I don't do this on the phone, so I'm afraid I'm not very much help. So my apologies for that. But I will send you the slides afterwards.
Okay, that sounds good.
So next thing I wanted to mention is summarizing species, and I'm going to run out of time very soon, but I wanted to go over this. Just keep in mind that it's again, we're looking at that first period of detectability right now. So what you put down is each bird is only mentioned once, and it's only in this particular non-focal species, you're only recording the secondary species. So if you hear three-red-winged blackbirds, or see three-red-winged blackbird males, but you saw two in the first 5 minutes and the third one came in the second, you would count two in the first and then you'd add that third one in the second 5 minutes. And the same with the tree swallows, as I explained, except I think my math is off here from what I said. So if you saw one in the first 5 minutes, you put that down. And if you saw three new ones in the second 5 minutes, you add those in the third. And 10 new ones in the third, you add those in the 10. So it's never does that, they only record each species once. And
And
that
just,
is in, yeah,
sorry, good. I'll just jump in. For those of you who are on the phone and you can't see the chat, somebody suggested just slide the screen to the right. Sorry. Okay, keep going, Kathy.
oh, okay. Nice to know somebody knows how to do this. Um, Now that's the last fancy graph I have. So we're good, Jolene. All you can listening to me talk fine now is good. So some other things to keep in mind. I just wanted to mention some troubleshooting species ID. Try to listen to the full carls. We do not at this time allow Merlin to be used as part of the ID protocol. We need you to be able to identify the bird yourself. And half of that is because it's not always right. And other ones, um, there's a lot of reasons involved. The biggest one is it's got to be done the same way as it's been done in the past. It should be consistent for standards. But when you are surveying, try to listen to the full calls. Try to know which species are in your area, so you might not be expecting a species that would be found elsewhere. Keep an eye out for unusual calls. And you know what? If you can't identify everything because it's a really unusual call, write it down and then bring it to us and look it up later or just mark it as an unknown. And there's lots of similar sounding species that you can see on the Marsh Mining Program training information on the website. And the other biggest problem I think people have is surveying birds before you're ready. Make sure you're confident before you survey them. But I also know some people undervalue their skills. So take the time in the marsh and find out if you're comfortable with your bird ID. And when you do, then you're ready to survey. Um, okay, I don't know if you want to go over anything else here. Um, for broadcast speakers, I don't have a lot to share. It's all about the battery. You want to have things that have a good battery. Bluetooth does not make a difference, it seems, from what I'm learning. As long as you have strong batteries in both your broadcast device, which may be your phone or whatever it is, and your speakers. And you want to definitely test and make sure it's good enough beforehand. Um,
Yeah,
we've
it's
already talked,
it's
yeah.
amazing how many choices like options there are for this now. Of course, when Kathy and I started doing this, we just had tape recorders, but
Yes.
my kids have like these little Bluetooth speakers, and they're amazingly loud. So there's lots of options out there that work really well.
Well, the interns who were doing this broadcast test, and you guys will all see an article on this later, they used a big expensive Bosch unit. They used another moderate price unit, and then the girl went and she picked up a dollar store unit, and the dollar store unit kept up with the other two. So it doesn't necessarily have to be expense, but you want to keep an eye on those battery levels. And now I think that's it. I'm going to stop sharing. Um, and And what other questions I have is somebody was asking about tick prevention, and I don't have a lot of great information to share on that. The biggest thing I can suggest is to look up your health units protocol, look up Lyme, Ontario, or um, Senator CDIC in the US to learn more. And Jolene has a question. So I will get to you in a second, Jolene. You're next in line. And you'll want to keep out of the long grass whenever you can. You're going to want to keep your pants tucked in when you can. And you cannot undervalue a tick check. I know how embarrassing they are for some people. You can't undervalue the need for tick check when you get back to site. That's an absolute. And if you do get a bit in an attack and the tick has been on you for more than 24 hours, you want to talk to your medical practitioner and get some antibiotics. Um, all right, so Jolene had a question. Jolene, as soon as I figure out how to let you on, I will let you talk. And all right, you're free to talk if you want to ask your question, Jolene.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, okay, nice to meet you both. So I was just gonna comment, that's all. I just read a recent study. Researchers are basically looking at lemongrass essential oil. So if you have the means to purchase that and just basically bathe in it, it deters the ticks from detecting that you are there. So I mean, I haven't tried it yet, but I aim to. And then the other thing is just to reverse tape, like if you have duct tape or whatever it is, packaging or anything like that. Just put tape, like if you put it on your ankles and your, above your knees, on your wrists, that kind of thing. That seems to help quite a bit. It stops them. Not really much.
Um, that's It could very well be the case. I do not know that stuff, and we're very careful with providing medical advice here. But Lyme, I think it's Lyme, Ontario. I'm just checking out the link right now. They have an excellent website, and they have a lot of information on the types of ticks and the ticks protection. There probably is equivalents to the U.S. I'm just not as familiar with them. And like I said, the best thing is a tick check. And considering you need to wash afterwards, which is an absolute much anyways, and you have to do the tick check anyways, I still recommend DEET because DEET will help. Although often I just do a tick check afterwards. It all depends on how comfortable you are with that. Doug, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I just tuck my pants in my socks, tuck my shirt in, and a collared shirt is good, because ticks crawl up and they tend to when they get under your collar, they don't go any farther. So that keeps them from getting up into your hair and stuff. And yeah, just a complete tick check. So like if I've really been in ticky places, when I come home, I take all my clothes off, and ticks are really sensitive to humidity. So if you throw your clothes in the dryer for like 20 minutes, it like pretty much nukes them. And it's the dryness rather than the heat that they're sensitive to. But otherwise, I just spread my clothes out under a really bright light, like pot lights in the kitchen or whatever that's really bright, and I just carefully look through them. And it's good to wear light colored clothing because then it's easier to spot ticks. Um, and then you can be pretty effective if you go slowly and look through them. And yeah, and then of course check everywhere on your body after too. And then it's pretty effective if you're really thorough with the searching of your clothes and you after.
And definitely, if you do get a tick, especially, I think it's your health unit will have it written down. If it's 24 to 48 hours after the tick bite has been on, like if you can figure that out, you need to talk to your medical practitioner
And
because
it's
they pretty,
good to
yeah,
keep the tick. Keep it.
it is. But I think a lot, especially in Southern Ontario, a lot of health units just assume black leg ticks carry Lyme's disease now and automatically send you out to the doctors for antibiotics. And yeah, the antibiotics are dreadful, but better having them than not. All right. Is it possible? This is Megan Jennings. Is it possible to get extra copies of the survey sheets? I found my first frog survey sheet to appear rather messy. I would like to transfer the information to a clean sheet if that is possible. Field form versus summary sheet for the frogs. First off, we don't mind messy sheets because we know exactly because you can make errors if you transfer data, so don't get too concerned about that. But if you want fresh sheets, they're all available on Nature Counts in the volunteer portal. So you have to have an account there, so you have to register and I have to approve you. But once you have that, all the sheets are there and you can under the resources link, and I can actually share that with people. And you can easily grab them.
Yeah, the PDFs are all there if you have access to them.
Yeah. Let me just pull up my system here. Now, while I'm pulling up the system, so I'm going to multitask here. There's also questions about what to do if you have injured birds. And that was one question that was asked. And all I'm going to do with that one is I'm going to share some links. And we're not a place that can help with injured birds. That is because it's just not our skill set. But there are some great rehabbers throughout Ontario and the US. And those three links that I just put in all have maps to show you which rehabbers are closest to you and take birds. And what I would recommend if you have an injured bird, contact them first, see if they can take the bird. And likely you will have to rescue the bird and take it to them because they rarely have the capacity to go pick up or save birds. They have to have birds propped to them. But that gives you a list. And I would trust the advice they gave you if you need in that situation for catching birds. I also want to share, at least in Canada, change in the Migratory Bird Act in 2020 allows kind of the animal equivalent of a Good Samaritan law. You can catch a bird and you can deliver it, you can move it to a safe location and or deliver it to medical support without being legally in trouble. That's right in the law now. Not everybody is totally familiar with that law, but that's what it sits at right now. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, now I'm going to just show you guys how to get a hold of the um, so everybody see the rail now?
Yep, got it,
Yeah.
Kathy.
So this is the Nature Counts website, and you have to have um, an account for it. And we'll work on a phone interface browser. It's not in the app, but if you go down, if you log in, and mine looks slightly different from yours because I have admin controls. And if you go to About Resources, you'll see lots and lots of stuff, including a data form section. And in the data form section are all the different forms that we provide to volunteers. So I find most people survey and think about these things after I'm not available. And this allows you to self advocate and take care of your needs. Certainly, you can call me and ask me to mail you data forms, but this is far quicker if you have access to a printer. Um, and there's also on here, you also have in here if people don't aren't familiar with it, I'll just point this out. There's a fantastic marsh guide in here as well as the handbooks if you lose track of yours because things disappear, especially if you move and stuff. And trying to find it here. We have a section in here somewhere about oops. The training files are also available on here. Now, some of this stuff you can access without logging in. Other stuff you cannot. So this is why you're going to hear whenever I say to you, go to the volunteer portal and Nature Counts, log in, and then look for your material. I can't even send you links from this site and trust that they're going to work because if they require you to log in and you don't log in, you're going to get a 404 error. So that's just something important to remember. There's a huge amount of information on there that we've shared with you. You just have to access it and get into it. Okay. So let's see. Do we have any other questions? Um, so we answered Megan's. Does anybody have any tips they want to share or have things that they would like us to share specifically? Please speak up. It's important that we hear from you. Um, Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, and our timing is good. But definitely, if you want me to go over any of those things in more details, let me know because the whole point of this is to help you guys. And we didn't get a lot of questions, so I'm more than happy to slow down and go over things if there's a particular topic you want me to go over. Well, then I will let Doug talk. And certainly, if you have questions about what we've talked about, speak up or put it in the chat or the Q&A. Otherwise, or questions about Doug's talk, go ahead and do that as well.
Sounds
Doug,
good.
go for it.
You might have to pass the sharing baton to me.
Oh, yes, that multiple share thing. All right. Over to you.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. Okay, I assume you're seeing now what's up with the GLMMP.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is there's a bunch of stuff at the beginning here that some of this we covered in the previous two chats, this one being the third and final one. We went over, there's sort of, there's 26 updates here. I think in the first one, we went through some of the upcoming changes to the protocol. And then we started, the rest of the stuff is examples of like papers, different science products that we've produced over the last 4 or 5 years or so using Great Lakes MMP data. So I'm just going to skip through the first part. We talked about some protocol changes that are coming with birds and habitat, and there's some changes coming for frogs, and we're going to go completely into nature counts for the 2027 season. We're going to develop some guidelines for using automatic recording units or ARUs for doing frogs. That's coming. And then we went through some of these papers in the past, but I'm going to skip through these ones because we covered them last time. And I think this is where we start out new. So down at the the bottom here, it says recent science number 5. So I think there's 9 examples of where we've taken Great Lakes MMP data and we've written a paper, and the idea is it has some kind of conservation applications. This is where, like, wonderful people like yourself go out and collect all this amazing data, and then we try to take it all and use it to benefit marsh birds and frogs. So that's basically what all these examples are. So this paper was interesting. um, it took Great Lakes MMP data as well as data from 2 other marsh bird monitoring programs, and used the marsh bird data and the habitat data, because these other 2 programs collect habitat data within the station just like we do for the MMP. So, and it created habitat models, basically like mathematical formulas that predict what kind of habitat the marsh birds like, depending on the variation amongst the stations. And it did that for each of the 3 data sets. And then it sort of took the formulas and tried to predict the marsh birds in the other data sets to see how transferable the information is amongst the programs. And why would we want to do that? Well, if you have a place where you don't have a wonderful program like the marsh monitoring program, but you want to use a model based on marsh monitoring program, you want to know if you can transfer these mathematical formulas around and whether they do a good job in other areas. So that was the idea of sort of swapping things around. And it turns out that you can swap formulas around basically amongst programs, and they work decently well. But one really interesting part of this for participants like yourselves in the MMP is that the habitat formulas based on your data transferred the best. They were most general, and I think that tells us 2 things. I think it tells you that you folks are really good at collecting your habitat, and you're just as good as the professionals, because the other 2 programs were entirely professional, not citizen science programs at all. So your habitat data was just as good as the professionals. So well done. I mean, Kathy and I knew this. We were expecting this, but it's always good, because there are skeptics of citizen science out there. So that's good. And the second reason is, I think the Great Lakes MMP data we have all kinds of different wetlands that you are sampling. We have inland ones and coastal ones and throughout a large area. Whereas these other 2 data sets, the one was Great Lakes coastal wetlands only, and the other one, as you can see way on the left-hand side of the map there, was just prairie potholes. So I think those were more specialized data sets, whereas ours is more general because we have more wetland types, and that's why the mathematical formulas or the models, whatever you want to call them, from the MMP transferred better. So feather in the hats for you on that one. And this is a nice example of showing, like, the real power of the marsh monitoring program is that we collect data using these standardized protocols. These other 2 programs use the same kind of approach, almost identical. There's a few minor variations, but they're minor, for collecting bird and habitat data. So your data can be combined with these other programs, which is really powerful. And one of the other chats we were talking about, when you're collecting data just in your one route, or maybe you only have a couple of stations, and sometimes you're like, how can it make a difference? I'm only collecting data at a few stations. How can this really be important? But remember, there's hundreds of other people collecting data the same way, and we're using a standardized protocol that even other programs outside the Great Lakes are using. And your data can be combined with potentially thousands of stations where people are collecting bird, frog, and habitat data in the same way. So power in numbers, power in standardization. It's really cool stuff. Okay, I'll stop babbling there. Any comments or questions, Kathy? Maybe not. If there isn't, I'll just keep.
Not yet.
Okay, very good. All right, let's see what the next one is. This is obviously completely informal. I didn't really prepare what I was going to say. I'm just going to babble. So, oh yeah, the next one, we covered this one in our recent Great Lakes MMP newsletter, the Marsh Monitor. We had a little blurb in there about this one. This was really neat. This is the kind of thing, again, the power of the MMP. We can use it to answer so many different kinds of questions. This one, we just simply wanted to know, in marshes where there's more muskrats, do we have more marsh birds? And what better data set to test this with marsh monitoring program data? Um, just a little bit of background, if you don't happen to know much about muskrats, I mean, they eat a lot of vegetation. They eat cattails, just like the one in the photo there. And they eat so much vegetation that they actually create open gaps in emergent vegetation beds. And as you probably know from watching your own marsh birds amongst your stations, you'll know that marsh birds like their emergent vegetation broken up to be interspersed, so to speak. Interspersed like open pools of water and then little islands, and they like the emergent vegetation to be all broken up, not one big thick patch. And so, long story short, where you've got muskrats, the emergent vegetation patches are broken up more because they're eating patches through it all the time, and the marsh birds like that. So you get this nice positive relationship. This data set's a little bit messy here, but we did find the expected relationship that where you've got more muskrats, you've got more marsh birds that like to use emergent vegetation that's broken up into interspersed. And the next step here is that in some parts of the Great Lakes, especially in coastal wetlands, like the shoreline wetlands that are around the Great Lakes, we call them coastal, um, some of the vegetation patches are really filling in. And for some reason, muskrat numbers are declining. Nobody really knows why. It's a big, huge mystery. There's lots of folks working on it, trying to figure out, where are all the muskrats going. But because of that, the vegetation is getting less and less attractive to marsh birds because it's filling in and the muskrats aren't there to make the little holes and the little pools and the patches in it. So some places are starting to experiment with artificially breaking up the cattail mats. So we're testing that in a few places. And again, we'll use MMP to track and see if the marsh birds react well to it. Okay. What else we got here? Oh yeah, this is really interesting thing. I've been working on this for a few years now. This is a review chapter in a book. This just the title of the chapter is Wildlife, and the title of the book is Limnology of Coastal Wetlands Associated with Large Freshwater Lakes, and it's actually worldwide. But the neat thing and it's just one chapter. I think it's 18 chapters there, a bunch of different other topics. But the nice thing is we've packed all kinds of examples in this chapter from the MMP, and you can see here's a figure from the chapter just showing the number of marsh wrens per plot. This is MMP data over the years in inland wetlands, and this quills is short for coastal wetlands of large lakes. So basically these are Great Lakes coastal where the blue line is, and this is inland away from the lakes where it's orange. And you can see that marsh wrens really like the coastal wetlands a lot more than they like the inland wetlands. But we've overviewed all kinds of other things we've learned using MMP data over the years that's going to go into this book chapter, which is exciting. If and when it ever comes out, these book chapters, these edited books take years and years to
So,
get them
so
out.
Doug, there could be future students who have to study what our volunteers provide for
That's right,
tests.
basically, yes. Yep. Okay, what do we got next here? Oh yeah, I put this in just to remind folks that the Great Lakes MMP data, birds and frogs, goes into the State of the Great Lakes report. We did this. The last one was in 2022, but there is a 2025 report that's going to come out sometime this summer, I guess. Actually, it's scheduled to come out. And this report's really important. It's required by the governments of Canada and the US under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. And we combine MMP data with a couple of other large data sets, again, that collect the data in the same kind of way that you folks are. And a lot of politicians and decision makers and policymakers really pay close attention to this. There's I forget how many. There's like a couple dozen indicators that go into this report, and marsh birds are one, and coastal wetland frogs is the other. And you can see here what you're seeing on the map here is we take all the data and we calculate this index of biotic condition. And basically you can just think of it as there's a dot for each wetland. And again, they're mostly interested in coastal wetlands, so we didn't do it for any of the inland stuff. But we basically take all the marsh bird information or all the frog information, and we try to come up with one number out of 10 for each wetland. And 10's good and 0's bad. And it's kind of technical as to how we come up with that score out of 10, but that's what we do. And it makes it really simple. Like you're taking all those species and all the abundance and all that, and you're wrapping it up into one number, and it works really well for decision makers because it's like everybody understands a score out of 10, right? Everybody understands what that means. So all the wetlands are ranked, and you can see changes over time, and you can compare amongst different parts of the lake and see where things are doing well and where things are doing poorly and how that's tracking over time. And this actually brings quite a bit of money for wetland restoration. At least up until recently, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative in the U.S., we're talking like $300 to $400 million a year going into wetland restoration and other restoration work. And we also have something similar here in Canada, the Great Lakes Protection Initiative, under our new Canada Water Agency. And it's stuff like this that helps fuel the continuance of those funds. So that's just wanted to mention, like, this is another way that your effort in collecting your MMP data, this is the kind of place it goes, and it really does make a big difference in bringing around resources and money to get some really good things done for wetlands.
Before we move forward, Doug, we have
Yep.
a couple questions. I'll
Okay,
do
sure. Yeah.
Peggy's first since it's the easiest, I think. Where can we read these ratings? Now, the State of the Great Lakes report is on the Environment Canada website, is it not?
Yes. So I could, let's see. It's
I
on
can look it up.
the Great Lakes Commission. If you just Google State of the Great Lakes report, it'll pop right up. It's the
Okay.
easiest way to do it, and it's the IJC, the International Joint Commission, and they have like you can get all the previous ones there. The 2025 one won't be there yet because, like I say, it's not officially released yet. But you can get this 2022 report that you see there. You should be able to find it just by Googling State of the Great Lakes report.
Now, the next question is a bit more complex, and might require a little bit more information. One of my counts, this is from Megan. One of my count spots had a significant loss of habitat since last year due to logging from a nearby property owner. Should I indicate this in the survey? Um, the simplest thing is if the logging has impacted your sampling area itself, the 100-meter radius semicircle, you should automatically be reporting it when you fill out the data form. Or you can mention it in other ways that impacted the wetland. Other than that, we don't have a clear way of sharing and using that information. Although I think you're quite right. It may impact the wetland itself, upland logging.
Yeah,
Doug, do you have anything to
yeah, it's
share
a
on
really
that?
good question. Yeah, like Kathy says, if the amount of wetland habitat in your plot has gotten smaller, then that will get reflected in the percentages of coverage that you report. And we're working more and more with remote sensing data. There's satellites are like going over constantly, and there's many different satellites and sources of remote sense stuff. And we're getting more and more into how to tap into that. A lot of it's free as well now. It's a little bit difficult to work with, but that's something we're really looking at, trying to figure out how we can automate that each year. And some of this stuff is at like 30 by 30 meter pixels, and we should be able to pick things up. Like if all the area around your marsh gets logged and now it's a field or it's been turned to urban or whatever, we should be able to pick that up with remote sensed data. And eventually we want to we want to automate all this, like I say, so we have annual estimates of sort of what's within a few kilometers of each of the stations right across the board. And eventually, like when you think about it, Marsh Monitoring Program does a really good job of monitoring what's happening with marsh birds and frogs in existing wetlands, right? Because there has to be a wetland there for you able to survey a station. Like if your whole wetland gets plowed under, we just pack up and we go somewhere else where there's a marsh. So what we're missing are wetlands that are disappearing completely. And what we want to do is use the remote sensing data to measure wetlands that are disappearing completely over time and incorporate what we're losing in terms of marsh birds and frogs from those wetlands that are disappearing entirely and integrate that with the information we're getting from existing wetlands so we have the total picture. Because like I say, what we MMP really tells us good handle of what's going on in existing marshes, but it's missing that piece about the ones that are getting plowed under. And we think we can integrate the two and use remote sensing data. Anyway, long-winded answer for your question, but it's a really good point about what's going on around in the surrounding landscape. It's really important. It really influences birds and it really influences frogs even more because a lot of our frogs spend time outside the wetland in the upland areas around our marshes. So it's really important as to what's there, and we have some papers coming out on that very soon, too, that tell that story using MMP data and remote sense stuff. Okay, sorry. Hopefully I answered the question and didn't babble on too long there.
I think you're good. Yes.
Okay, shall we go to the
Can,
next?
sure.
All right. Oh yeah, State of the Canada's Birds. Okay, so many of you will be familiar with State of Canada's Birds, but if not, um, this is like sort of the current state of what's going on with all birds in Canada. And there's a nice new fancy website. It's really slick. There's all kinds of interactive stuff. Check it out. Just Google the State of Canada's Birds. You'll find it. But the really cool thing is, for the first time, MMP data is incorporated right in the species account. And this is important because, on the list on the left here, not just any data set makes it in to this. The standards for what data gets looked at in the State of Canada's birds is really stringent, but MMP makes the cut. So here's another place where your data is going. And I think this is a real feather in the citizen scientists' hat that participate in the MMP because, like I say, not just anything makes it in here. Trust me. So it's really neat. And like here's an example, interactive. Like this is MMP data for least bittern. There it is, Marsh Monitoring Program data. There's your stuff, Lake Erie watershed. And this is the State of Canada's birds process now is really the decision making piece for all species in Canada. So I don't know. I'm really excited about this. This is pretty cool stuff that MMP is right in there.
And you know what? It's a great place to look up. Like if you have any questions about birds in Ontario or birds in Canada, the State of Canada's bird website and the Nature Counts Explorer websites are a great place to look up and see how that species doing.
Yep, it's all one-stop shopping. Like everything is there. It's really cool. Check it out if you haven't. I think you'll find it really interesting.
I'll drop the link in as well. Now we have another question, Doug, and I'll
Yep.
let you answer it while I look for the link for State of Canada's birds. And it's, do we survey new man-made wetlands being created in new communities?
Okay, sorry, I might have to have that one repeated to me again.
Sorry. Do we survey man-made wetlands, new ones that have been created in new communities?
Yep, those are our there's nothing wrong with a created wetland. We that's okay. That's fair game. Um, we do what do we usually say, Kathy? At least half the station area should be covered in marsh, which I know is a little bit loose, but that's about it's about a hectare, isn't it, or half a hectare? I can never remember whatever it
Yeah.
turns out to be. But marsh is pretty loose. Like, emergent. If it's got cattails, it's marsh. If it's shallow water, less than 2 meters, and it's got plants growing in it, you got lily pads, you got some submerged vegetation there. That's marsh. So if that meets the criteria, it doesn't matter if it's a created wetland or not. As long as you got half your station area covered with created marsh, you're good to go.
Some created wetlands are phenomenal. Other
Yeah,
ones not so much, but some ones are really quite interesting to watch.
yeah, for sure.
And that's all our questions for now.
Okay. Well, I don't know what's next, but let's find out. Oh, my button will work. Hold on. There we go. Okay, I think now we're on to, yeah, future science. So um, one thing I'm going to be working on, actually, I'll probably start next week, to be honest. We're going to, and again, this is the power of Marsh Monitoring Program data. We're going to combine Marsh Monitoring Program data with a couple other big data sets, and we want to look at whether mute swans, which are a non-native species here, whether they have a negative effect on marsh birds. And the data is set up perfectly for this. We got oodles of data. You can see the map there. Lots of places with data. The blue dots are where mute swans have been detected. They're mostly in coastal areas, and then the open dots that aren't blue are where surveys have been done, but there are no mute swans. There's a bit of concern right now that mute swans might be having a negative effect. My guess is that for the marsh bird species that hide in vegetation, like Virginia rails and least bitterns and things like that, I think they're in the thick vegetation. I don't think they're bothered by mute swans. The mute swans probably don't even know they're there. But things like common gallinules and piebald grebes, maybe. So we'll see. This will be a really an interesting way to test it. People who advocate for mute swan control often cite interference with marsh birds as a reason, and so this will sort of tell us if this is an issue or not. I don't think it will be for most species, and I think if it is going to be an issue, it'll be piebald grebes and common gallinule. And even for those, I'm not. My hunch is it's probably not going to be an issue for them either. But we got oodles of data. We'll have lots of power. We were going to ask the question. We'll see what the answer is, and that'll be that. It'll be very useful for management. Another thing that's coming up, and the same kind of thing, we're going to combine Great Lakes MMP with Quebec MMP data. Remember, there is a marsh monitoring program that operates in the St. Lawrence Valley in Quebec, and this is to look at long-term patterns and trends in least bitterns in inland marshes versus coastal. And I think there's some really interesting differences between the two due to fluctuating water levels on the Great Lakes and in the St. Lawrence River. I think we've got like there's fantastic water level historical record in the Great Lakes for water levels, and there's similar data for the St. Lawrence River as well. It's a little messier to work with and to get, but I've looked into it. I think I think with enough elbow grease, enough work, we can make them similar. So again, power and numbers here, right? Combining Great Lakes with Quebec MMP data, we have Quebec MMP has been going on since 2004, not quite as long as Great Lakes, which is since 1995. But man, that's years and years of data with lots of fluctuating water levels in coastal versus inland. Should be some really interesting patterns there, because I think that when the water levels rise in those places in the coastal areas, the least bitterns love it. The numbers go through the roof in coastal areas when the coastal wetlands get inundated with water and the water level comes up. And I think there may be a population pulse where it produces lots of least bitterns in the coastal marshes and they move into inland wetlands in sort of the years after the high water. And of course, we have enough and we have enough samples across the landscape from where folks like yourselves are gathering all these data that we should be able to measure that pulse and across a huge landscape, right? Like no other data set can do this, right? And least bitterns are a big ticket species. They have been listed as threatened in Canada. They were delisted recently because their numbers went up so much, but we're wondering once the water levels come down, we think their numbers may fall, they get listed again. So again, MMP will really be telling for these patterns and relationships with water level.
It's smart to mention, Doug, how important it is to have change in a wetland. Like a lot of our wetlands anymore, especially the Great Lakes ones, are actually managed to mimic original change. And how important it is to have high water and low water. And if the wetland doesn't look the same every year, that's fairly normal in the way it should be.
Yep, it may actually be a changing wetland is often a healthy wetland. These things are dynamic. They hardly ever stay the same. So that's just a normal part of especially Great Lakes coastal wetlands, because I think especially there, the fluctuating water levels really drive change quickly, and across many different wetlands in a similar way, right? Because like the lake is going up and down and affecting all those coastal wetlands in the same way at the same time. Whereas inland, the water level of a particular wetland is sort of unique, right? It might be because there's a beaver dam went out on that one wetland, but that doesn't affect necessarily, well, it might affect some of the wetlands downstream, but a few kilometers away, it's totally independent. So your water level changes and fluctuations in inland are all willy-nilly all over the place. But in your coastal wetlands, they're more coordinated, if you will, across many different wetlands. So it's some really interesting dynamics there too with the water level stuff.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. So definitely, if anybody has anything they want us to go over with on the tips, because I know I went through them fast, let us know. If you have any questions, let us know. And Doug, you got
I
at
think there
least,
might be one. I think there's 3 future ones. So let's just go one
yeah.
more and see. Am I right? Oh yeah. Okay, this is a good one to end with. We'll end with this one. So and I'm literally writing this paper right now. All that's left is write the discussion. So I just did this. So one thing that people like to use the MMP for a lot is when a wetland gets restored. So they go in there and they do some work. Maybe they do common reed control, like Phragmites control, or they install a water structure and they're trying to mimic natural water level fluctuations. They're trying to do something to benefit marsh birds, frogs, and other wildlife. Um, Often MMP is used to sort of measure the response of marsh birds and frog to those restoration activities. And it works okay, but we think it can work a lot better with a few enhancements. So that's what we did in this project. We took like the regular MMP bird and frog protocol and we added elements of 5 other survey protocols to make it even better at the wetland scale. So I won't go through what they all are, but suffice to say, there's 5 tweaks we made, and these basically they basically add more visits and they add more stations in a particular wetland than we would normally have from regular old MMP. And so we're just looking to see, like, what do you get out of that? Is it worth it? Like, do you get, how many more species do you get? And do you get more precise estimates of abundance of each of the marsh species and more precise estimates of occurrence of the frog species? So it's a very applied kind of thing, but the results I think are going to be really useful for folks who want, like, they really want to know what's going on before and after restoration in one particular wetland. Regular, like a typical, normal, good old regular MMP, we tend to want to make inferences at much larger spatial scales. So we're interested, like, what's going on in the Lake Erie watershed or the entire Great Lakes watershed. We don't necessarily want to know what's going on at one particular wetland. So basically, it basically says, what extra do you have to add to the MMP to get a really good answer at your one particular wetland? So again, it just makes the MMP, well, we're calling it the enhanced MMP, even more useful for this other application. So there you go.
You got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, I don't know what's next, but we can find out. Oh yeah, okay, well, I'll end with one more. This one's pretty cool. So right now, the Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas, the third Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas, is just finishing up this year. This is the last of the 5 years of field work. And we, if you're not familiar, we had an Atlas 3 Marsh Bird Survey component. And in a nutshell, the easiest way to describe this is, like, we basically worked MMP into the Atlas. And like in southern Ontario, south of the Shield, we don't really need more marsh bird data, or because like we already have good MMP coverage there. But in central and northern Ontario, like basically the Shield and north, we have very little MMP data. There's not a lot of volunteers up that are permanent residents up there, so we just don't get a lot of MMP participation. But because the Atlas is like a special effort to go into those areas, it was a perfect chance to kind of like, okay, while you're up there, can you do marsh bird surveys? So we worked in this marsh bird component, and it's been hugely successful. You can see the orange squares on the map there are 10 by 10 kilometer squares. The Atlas tries to go to all these 10 by 10 kilometer squares in a continuous grid right across the province. And the squares you see there are willy-nilly all over the place because we made a random sample selection of squares where we wanted the Atlas 3 Marsh Bird survey done based on a bunch of strata, and so we get a representative sample of different things we were interested in or whatever. And the orange ones are the ones that have been completed as of last fall. And there's going to be one last push. So you can see there's a lot of orange squares lit up there in central and northern Ontario where we never had much MMP data before. So what this is going to allow us to do is to take your regular MMP data from southern Ontario, combine it with the same kind of data collected in central and northern Ontario, and now we can do all kinds of useful things right across the whole landscape, basically north to the extent of roads in Ontario. And what I really hope to be able to do with this is estimate total population sizes of the different focal species throughout almost, we won't have the Hudson Bay lowlands way up beyond roads, but we'll have everything else. Um, and those population sizes are going to be really important for conservation planning because everything gets planned in terms of knowing the total number of these critters that are out there. So now we'll be able to do it. And there's a bunch of other applications we're going to be able to do with this. This is the next major project I'm going to work on when I'm done the mute swan and the least bittern papers. And it's going to be really cool. So maybe I'll stop there.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate having you with you. I was just going to mention, Doug, that we did get funding to do Marsh Watch Ontario edition.
That's right. That's right. If any of you have been following along with Marsh Watch on the prairies, if you Google Marsh Watch, you can find the website. We are going to bring that to the Great Lakes. We got money from a foundation to help us do this. And Marsh Watch is basically, you can think of it kind of like um, a gentle introduction to the MMP. It teaches you how to identify what you're seeing in your marsh and when throughout the course of the season, and kind of get sort of into the basics of collecting the data. It's really geared towards folks who want to do marsh bird surveys or frog surveys, but they're just not quite at the ready for full out MMP yet. And the idea is that we're sort of graduating folks towards doing MMP eventually. So that's really exciting. We'll be working on that this fall, and hopefully the idea is that we'll deliver it in spring and early summer of 2026.
So you'll have something to share with your friends who have not been involved with marsh monitoring in the future. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I will share the recording and the links with everybody in the slides after the fact. And I appreciate everybody coming. We've had 23 people here today, so it's been nice. And definitely, if you still have questions or you need clarity on anything, I know we went through things fast. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask.
Yeah, don't be shy. Just send your
Yeah.
questions. We like answering questions.
Bird survey start on the 20th, and hopefully you all have a great time surveying. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. This was fun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.